Record. All right, good evening. I'm so excited to have this talk with Dr. Josephine Grace Chua Rojo. Did I pronounce it right? Okay, so let me introduce her. She is a special disease of the ear, nose, throat, head and neck surgery. She is a graduate of Cebu Institute of Medicine, Cebu City, Philippines, Doctor of Medicine. Also, she graduated Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, University of Philippines, Cebu College, Cebu, Philippines. So I will let her with this tell her about herself without further ado, and I'm so excited. Um, uh, I guess so. I cannot talk right now. So, with further ado, let me introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Josephine. Take it away. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Grace. We even have the same name. So I am so pleased and honored to be presenting this to you. It might be a small group, but with this recording, I'm sure with technology, everybody can have access to it. And actually, I have a lot of videos. I perform Facebook Live videos regarding this way of life since last year, early last year, I think. And actually, it's been a part of my weekly routine to talk about this. And I'm happy that you are all in here because we have the same advocacy, which is to help as many people as we can uh, achieving their best possible health yet. And this knowledge is not just coming from my medical background. My medical background just somewhat affirms the knowledge behind, and but this knowledge is something that's not hidden or something that's secret. A lot of people actually believed in it and actually applied it all of their lives, and at the same time known so much, even more complex details about this way of life more than I did. It's just that they do not have the medical background to give them the credibility. I think I consider myself fortunate to have discovered this on my early years of practice because I also know a number of doctors who are already on their late years of practice and they discovered it. And just like me, I feel like I've wasted about 4 years of my practice in medicine because I didn't know much then. But 5 years is nothing as compared to 4 decades, 40 years of others' experiences, and even others already retiring and still believing in the traditional medical practices, medical dictum that are no longer helping so many of us. So we can see people still dependent on medicine, still dependent on a lot of commercial and pharmaceutical products that are actually not really helping them cure or heal their illnesses. What it does is just it covers the symptoms. So what I usually tell them, it's like a band-aid technique. You cover the wound, but it doesn't mean that the wound is not there anymore. You're just covering it. So this is the very basic of the advocacy behind low carb nutrition and fasting lifestyle. And I'm so happy that Aster is also into fasting. It's not very common that I meet people for the first time who are into fasting. And I would like to say hello also to Marcham and Renally and to all of our future listeners of this video. I can just show some slides if it's important, but actually, I feel like you are already, we can just make it as a free talk. Okay. Since
Yeah.
I know you are also in the healthcare, you are all healthcare practitioners and of course professionals. So I don't think you would have any problem understanding the very concept of this way of life. So to start, our program or our topic is divided into two: low carb nutrition and at the same time fasting. As means for healing. So we can talk first. Hello, Naomi. Thank you so much
Yomi is
for being here. Okay, we are just about to start. The introduction just ended, but we will now start with a gist of our topic. So this is low carb nutrition, and fasting as a way to heal. So for those of you who do not know yet, I actually wrote books. So this one is Perfect Last Weight with a subtitle, An Evolutionary Perspectives Guide in Attaining an Ideal Body Weight the Fastest, Most Natural Way. And at the same time, the second book, it is Perfect at Last Health, Eat to Heal. So in summary, although it is geared towards weight, but it's simply a fasting protocol. So how you can introduce someone fasting from zero knowledge to accepting fasting as a natural and normal part of life. So this is it, and it can have various schedules. You can do intermittent fasting, which is the most popular now. That is fasting at least 12 hours to 23 hours a day. But you can also do longer fasting, so that is more than 24 hours. And I will tell you later how far I am into fasting right now. And because you might be shocked, and Perfect Last Health to Heal, it is simply the application of low carb nutrition and fasting as a part of healing. So I know vegetarian and whole foods is something that you promote, and I'm not sure if you are into vegetarian. Are you, Grace, a vegan diet or not really? Okay, so that's good to know because I'm actually not vegan or not vegetarian. I'm into real food, so that includes meat products, animal products. Although I do not believe also that we should consume it every day, like in lumps or anything that we can consume whatever how much we want. Because in the first place, we are not built to eat every day that much for all of our lives, simply because fasting should be integrated. There's really a day that we should be fasting. It's not normal for us to keep on eating. So we can go first with low carb nutrition. What is low carb nutrition? So low carb nutrition is basically devoid of processed sugars, processed processed carbohydrates, and actually general high glycemic index carbohydrates. So I would like also to emphasize that it's not just high glycemic index, because high glycemic index, as we all know, it spikes up our sugar. But there are other foods that are actually low glycemic index, but it's still something that we do not advise taking, simply because they are also high in insulin index. So there's two important indexes that we should be mindful for whenever we take something. And mostly it has something to do with insulin. A lot of the practitioners now are into just looking into the effect of certain foods in our blood glucose. However, the most important effect is actually not just in the glucose. It all boils down in hormones, because our body functions in hormones. The signaling, the metabolism, overall processes in our body functions because of hormonal signals. So sugar, it's just the basic knowledge that pushes those hormones into doing what they need to do. But it is more important for us to really look into the hormones itself. So one of the most important hormones that we should consider is insulin. Why? Because insulin is the one that dictates a lot of the processes that will be the main uh, driver of our metabolism, whether we go into fat burning or we go into glucose as a source of energy. It is important to know at least three macronutrients when it comes to our food. So we have carbohydrates, we have proteins, and we have fats. And among those, it is something that's not much discussed in medicine, but if you look into our biochemistry books, it is there. It's just that we were highlighting the different parts of biochemistry. But if you look further, it's really there. So out of these three macronutrients, Carbohydrates will spike insulin more. Proteins only on moderate amounts, simply because proteins, if eaten in excess, which is our standard dietary intake right now, extra proteins can be converted into glucose. Thus, there will still be that insulin effect. But proteins alone, if taken on the right amount, that is just simply 1 to 1.2, even up to 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. So that is actually too little. If you're like Aster, if you're 50 kilograms, you only need about 50 to 75 grams of proteins in a day. That is already enough for your metabolic needs. And extra protein can be converted into glucose, and that can be used into energy if you're physically active, or it can be converted into fats, because as long as there is insulin in our body, as long as there is insulin in our system beyond the baseline, so it's a given that we have insulin always. But the moment it spikes up, even just a little, fat burning will be on hold, because insulin is a hormone that is designed to store fats. It's a fat storing hormone, and it's also a fat preserving hormone. That is, it pushes our body to save fat. Save it, save it, save it, in hope for it to be used for emergency times, which is fasting times, the times where we should be fasting, or in early years of our evolution, it was starvation time. For example, winter season or non-harvest season specifically. However, with our modern day times, we no longer fast, no longer have times of starvation, simply because food is readily available. Before we can think, we can just presume our ancestors, our hunters and gatherers and cavemen's ancestors, that there's really no food the moment they wake up. They have to walk for miles to hunt for food, and maybe on a good day, they can hunt and they can find food on a good day, at earliest, maybe around lunchtime. And since they do not have they do not have ovens, they do not have mode of preparation, they will need to make their fire and chop it the very barbaric way, and it will take time. So on a good day, they can eat around 12 noon. Maybe on a normal day, they can eat around 4 in the afternoon, and they do not save it because there's no way to preserve foods. There's no refrigerator. They don't know any means to preserve food, so they consume whatever is there right at that moment. And because of the danger that comes with nighttime, they usually seek shelter come sundown. So also, sundown is actually a part where we are no longer supposed to eat, or at least our body has been used to not eating after sundown for the last 2 to 14 million years ago. And dinner only started after industrial and agricultural revolution, and that is just around 2000 years ago. So if you compare 2000 years ago as compared to 2 million years ago, 2000 years ago is very, very little. So I know you are into, you know about genetics, so we know that it's not easily altered, although our day-to-day eating, we now know that it can be improved, and simply because it will be integrated in our genes after generations and generations of practice as means to survive. Anyway, moving back to low carb nutrition, this is the reason why we promote low carb nutrition and not the standard balanced diet. So the standard balanced diet, if you compare it in a plate of meal, so you can have about half of that or 50% of that. Our standard diet in the hospital even is about 50 to 60% carbohydrates. So you can have 25 to 30% of that coming from proteins, and you minimize the fats as minimal as possible. So you can go into 10 to 20% maximum of the fats. So that is just a diet that is built to store fats. So when we say store fats, it's not just the peripheral fats that makes us look fat, because there are people who are not fat farmers. It is said that about 50% of the population are not fat farmers. And actually, although it is something that we feel like envious, we can envy those people who are not fat farmers, but actually no, because I even consider now the fat farmers are the lucky ones. Why? Because their body are giving them obvious signal when they are already eating too much, when they're already consuming too much. However, those people who are not fat farmers do not have a readily available signal to know when they are eating so much, unless you are very sensitive to your body, because insulin's effect is not just on fat storage, it's not just on fat metabolism. That is just one part of insulin. Insulin is an anabolic hormone, or what we call as building up hormone. It's designed to make things, to make stuff. That's why insulin is normally present only at 3 times in the human, especially women's life: during pregnancy, where you are feeding a growing baby; during breastfeeding, while you're still need to make more milk for your growing child; during growth years of a child, while he is still growing. So that is when insulin is expected to increase in a lifetime. However, there are also instances in a year that insulin is expected to rise, and that is during harvest season. So by harvest season, we mean the natural, local, organic, non-fertilized, non-GMO harvest season. So we can see how we are considered to be somewhat fooled with the idea that fruits are healthy. Yes, of course, fruits are healthy. They are full of nutrition, they're full of vitamins and minerals, but you cannot simply eat them 3 times a day with full of your plate all year round, because by nature we are not built to eat fruit every day, because by nature fruits are only available once on its own natural harvest season. If you can notice, fruit is not like that anymore. We even have seedless fruit, so you know how unnatural it is. And then fruits, we are eating fruits that are on harvest season, the other side of the planet. So remember, before, fruits are only eaten on the locality. There's no import export, there's no transportation, and people will walk for miles, will walk for days, and they will once they find a fruit bearing tree on its harvest season, they will stay there and they will consume it until the harvest season is gone. And that is the reason why whenever we eat carbohydrates, whenever we eat sugary food, even if it's fruit, we feel a little tired after, we feel like sleeping. That is the anabolic effect of insulin, because it will shut down our system so that our body can focus into processing those foods and making them and converting them into fats and storing them whatever way, whatever means necessary to store them. So over time, those fat formers can grow fat without any problem with their metabolism, with their blood chemistry. There's no elevated cholesterol, there's no elevated blood sugar, because the insulin effect is still on their weight. It's still capable of accommodating those insulin effects. However, those people who are not fat formers but can eat a plate full of rice, a whole loaf of bread, and can eat desserts 3 times a day, they know that even if they are looking skinny, they are looking athletic, but they know they are not at the top of their health. Common manifestations of too much sugar intake for those who are not fat formers are allergies. There are also a lot of inflammation, so they have a lot of aches and pains. And others can also have certain lumps tumors and cyst formation. Others can also grow into having gallbladder stones and even kidney stones and other build up in their joints that's causing them arthritis even at an early age. And some even have autoimmune diseases like skin diseases that they don't know what's triggering them, simply because we've been underestimating the effect of food on our health. Okay, and we've also underestimated the healing process of food if we only eat the right ones. So those are the basic of low carb nutrition and why we are actually promoting a low carbohydrate intake. We do not actually, although keto is okay, but we actually don't promote keto as a normal part of living. Keto is just a fast mimicking diet. So for those people who cannot fast but would like to fast because they still want to eat, so they can go into keto, because ketogenic diet will just mimic a body's response into fasting, wherein as long as you eat food that still don't rise insulin, so you're eating, but it's still on the basal level, your insulin. So your body will actually just go naturally into fat burning mode. So that is the concept behind ketogenic diet. But fasting, although is a normal part of our evolution, a normal part of our day to day, which we will discuss further in a while, but it is something that's not sustainable because it's also impossible for us to be on fasting all year round. So fasting should be done intellectually, the right time, the right way, the right timing, and of course with the right mindset. Because what prohibits us into doing a nutritional way to fast, which is a healthful way to fast, is actually the wrong mindset. We are bombarded with commercials that dictates that it's not good to be hungry. We should always have a food ready anytime when we were hungry. We should always have. That's why if we do a random check of bags of people traveling, of people who are outside their home, there's always those little treats, little foods that are there because they're afraid to be hungry. So this mindset already inculcated in our brain that saying no to foods and fasting is already something that sounds absurd. So why do we promote fasting as means to healing? It is simply because as we go back to our evolution, which is the first book actually, because between low carb and fasting, I actually discovered fasting first before low carb, and eventually added low carb because I realized that in order for us to achieve the best possible health effects of fasting, you should not negate its effect by eating the wrong food. So it is pairing up with the right food. But first and foremost, I discovered fasting first. So it has something to do with evolution. So with evolution, as what I mentioned a while ago, we can just imagine our ancestors' way of life before. That is actually a lot of fasting almost every day. So we already noted that on a good day, they can eat probably at earliest at 12 noon, and they will just stop after sundown to seek shelter. And that is also the concept actually behind the popular diet scheme before. I think in the 1990s, I think it was after six. It was after six, so no more eating after six. So before, I don't believe that because they didn't provide any explanation. But now we understand that that is actually one form of fasting, and that is circadian fasting. So circadian fasting is having a window of eating and fasting in a day. So one part would be you are fasting from sundown to sunrise, and then come sunrise, you can already start eating. But if we incorporate evolution's perspective, of course, they do not eat event right there and then the moment they wake up. So you can presume that they still would be busy trying to look for food. The female will go for miles, walk for miles, and gather whatever seeds and nuts that they can find, or if there's any produce going on. And the males will go for hunting, and they will go back in their place of shelter, and they will prepare the food. So if we incorporate evolution's day-to-day life and circadian fasting, so it's actually good to have around 12 noon as the earliest way to eat, and 6 p.m. as the latest way to eat, and close the window. It's we label them as windows, so an eating window and a fasting window. So why do we do that? Why do we promote that? Because with correction of circadian fasting, our body will naturally correct also its hormonal imbalances, hormonal signals that happens actually when we correct our circadian fasting. So comes 9 in the evening, especially if we remove the gadgets, if we remove the exposure to blue light, we will now start secreting melatonin. And melatonin, although it is made popular as means to sleep, as an assistance for sleeping, but its main goal actually is not just for sleeping. Its first effect is sleeping, because it needs our body to shut down. But its main purpose is actually healing. So it will regenerate our cells. It will induce regeneration. It will induce repair. It will induce immune system formation. That is even the reason why for current pandemic with COVID, there are now a lot of arising studies wherein they incorporate high dose of melatonin as an adjunct to people who are at risk of going into severe manifestations of COVID, and they found a lot of very good recoveries, even among diabetics, among hypertensive, when given high dose of melatonin. So it's actually shutting the system down, so the person can be sleepy, but its important effect is to ignite or infuse the restart the healing process, and it will also correct lipid metabolism, glucose metabolism, and also repair in our brain and everything else in our body. With the concept of autophagy. So if you haven't heard of autophagy, it is the self-eating mechanism of our body. It already won a Nobel Prize award when it was discovered by a Japanese scientist. Self-eating mechanism might sound so scary, but it's not. It is something very beautiful, because the moment we somewhat starve ourselves of nutrition coming from the outside, that's only the time that our body will actually look for food that is already stagnant or already been stored in our system. So the very basic part could be the fats that we've been storing, but there are a lot of other proteins also, and even glucose stores in our system that will never be used up, will never be tapped if we don't go into fasting, if we don't stop eating and consuming. Because as long as we keep on consuming foods, our body is built to consume those food first, because it thinks that it's only the only time that we have food, so we have to maximize it and save everything else for the rainy days or for the winter days. But we now know that we winter or non-harvest season no longer matter, but our genes is still like that of a caveman. That's why they say that we are modern men, but with the body or with the genetics and with the instinct that of a caveman from millions of years ago. That is the reason why, for example, when we are stuck in traffic, we feel uneasy, our legs are restless, because before, the only stressor that we have are more physical. So the moment there's stress in our body, we induce a fight and flight response. So that's why our legs are restless, because our body thought we either run for our lives or fight for it. So that is how that is just one basic example how our body responds to modern day problems, modern day stressors, just as if it is still a caveman. However, it's no longer functional, especially coming from our food. So the moment we keep on eating, our body will keep on accumulating, keep on saving, even if it's no longer, it doesn't have space anymore to store them. So what happens to the extra foods that we've been eating? So yes, it can be in the form of fats, but others it can be in the form of protein buildups that dysfunctions our normal functioning. So the amyloid deposits, the Lewy bodies in our brain that creates dementia that we've seen in Parkinson's disease, that we've seen in other neurodegenerative disease and Alzheimer's. So Lewy bodies, amyloid deposits are all misfolded proteins that accumulates. How about our eyes? There are a lot, our lens is made of protein, and over time it gets from a clear crystal, it becomes like a Mentos. So Mentos is on opaque, all white, and that is still all because of accumulation of extra proteins that we've been eating that are no longer used up. So with fasting, after 24 hours of fasting, actually that's the only time that autophagy kicks in. So with autophagy kicking in, you can actually clear up those things. Other forms, the worst kind, are actually tumors. So we know even in our family, I have three aunts who are very thin all their lives, but we came in a small town here, which is the number one sugar producer in the Philippines, a second largest sugar producer in Asia. So the family background is always employed in that company. So sadly, unfortunately, three of them died at the age of 48, 55, and 62, I think. All died of pancreatic cancer. So with pancreatic cancer, you can safely say that this is a lot something to do with sugar intake, because sugar intake is the number one inducer of pancreatic function. So it will induce our pancreas to produce insulin, and it can exhaust over time. So that's why, sadly, with pancreatic cancer, it is not actually diagnosed early. And once it's diagnosed, it's mostly too late, unless, of course, you are having annual physical examination, general executive checkup, even without symptoms. So with fasting, that is actually an opportunity for our body to cleanse itself. So you can think of yourself that whenever there are times that we ran out of food, we forget to do some groceries, and we happen to be stuck in our house. That's the only time that you open up all your cabinets, all of your pantry to look for food. And when you are in abundant phase, where you have all the foods available in your table, you no longer look for food in your cabinets, the ones hidden in your drawers in your pantry. You just eat whatever is there. So that is also what goes on with our body. It will not tap those stored foods if something there that is already available. So fasting is as important as eating. As I usually say, if we have intermittent fasting, so intermittent fasting is incorporation of fasting every day. So the minimum for me is actually the 12-6 eating. So that is a 18-6 schedule. So that is 18 hours of fasting and 6 hours of eating. So that is equivalent to intermittent fasting and daily eating. And fasting, longer periods, extended fasting, is actually comparable or should be done proportionate to our feasting. Okay, so feasting can be eating 3 meals a day for more than 12 hours a day, or eating carbo loaded foods. So, because I believe as we go back to our evolution, we actually have a leeway to eat carbohydrate rich food, but it doesn't need to be processed ones. It doesn't need to be ice cream, sundaes, French fries, rice, and what else? Donuts, and all of those chocolates. Carbo loaded rich foods should be the most nutritionally dense ones. So we have fruits, we have vegetables. Those are better options. And why am I somewhat against rice as part of our day-to-day life? Because rice is actually, although it is a whole food, but it is actually not part of our natural human nutrition, simply because rice is a product of agricultural revolution. But agricultural revolution again only started 2 years ago, 2,000 years ago, and it's something that our body was not able to adapt. Of course, if you want to incorporate them, you can, but you can consider its amount as well. So that is 20 to 50 grams of carbohydrates in a day. So if you want to consume it as rice, then go. You can have a cup of rice, but that cup of rice is already enough for the day, not for that meal. Okay. So if you've been taking rice 3 times a day, so that's already too much. Your body will already feel like it's feasting, it's harvest season. So if we've been taking carbohydrates as part of our lives for as far as we can remember. So our body was actually numb already, in numb to feasting, numb to harvest season because it never ever felt fasting. So if we want to restart our health, we can start by starting fasting again, incorporating fasting again, so that our body can appreciate the feasting time again. So that is somewhat the gist of the books that I wrote. There's actually three of them. The third one is about wellness and stress management, trauma, overcoming trauma, and all those. But for the purpose of this event, I am highlighting the book one and book two. So hygiene. So I will show it again for you. So this is the first one, perfect fast weight. It is an evolutionary perspectives guide on attaining an ideal body weight the fastest, most natural way. But even for those with natural weight but would like to improve their health, to maximize autophagy, to maximize healing, especially for those with tumors, to those with allergies, with autoimmune diseases, you can do that. You can read that so that you will be guided and you will not be scared how our body is actually more capable. Our body is actually built to adapt to food scarcity than food abundance. 95% of the illnesses we have today are due to food abundance. The 5% are due to trauma, due to violence. So if you are not a very violent person or you're not fond of riding motorcycles without helmet, so actually you are quite safe and you can already prevent most of the diseases that comes with food abundance. Modern day diseases is directly related to modern day food intake. So if we only remove the modern day food intake, modern day food, we can actually correct our body. Our ancestors, the hunters and gatherers, most of them died of trauma, accidents, physical injuries, but none with those mummies, those artifacts that we've seen, all of those, there's no sign of modern day diseases. There's no diabetes, there's not even much osteoporosis. Even if they are starving, they are fasting all of their lives. And our second book is Perfect Last Health, Eat to Heal. So this is low carb balance of low carb and fasting, because I understand the fasting can be scary for some and they thought that it's only for those who need to lose weight. So I actually made this to open up the door of fasting and low carb for those of normal weight but still needs to improve their health. And as what I said a while ago, I've been fasting regularly since I discovered about more than 2 years ago. So I do intermittent fasting every day, a minimum of 18 hours. Mostly I go 20 to 22 hours. And I only have an eating window. So I only eat for about 2 to 4 hours, maximum 5 hours in a day. In our family, since I'm Filipino and we are in a very Asian home, but since 2 years ago, we've never cooked rice. So we ditched our rice cooker already. So all of us in the family no longer eat it. And we've been at the top of our health. There's five of us in our siblings. Before, we understand that insulin, sugar, can have different effects on each individual. So to run down, our eldest brother have all normal blood values, normal blood pressure, but he is obese. Our sister is very fit, very lean, very muscular because she is very fond of going to the gym, extraneous exercises, but she has a lot of lumps in her breast and she always have aches and pains and chronic back pain. Our other brother, who is a seafarer, since they have regular checkup, he is tall, he is somewhat lean, but he has elevated liver enzymes, elevated uric acid, elevated SGPT. Our other brother, he has Down syndrome, so he had auditory hallucinations. So he had schizophrenia with auditory hallucinations. And me, although I've never been overweight, but I've been on the heavy normal and borderline diabetic at the age of 25. I've had chronic allergies. I have rhinitis, rhinosinusitis. I've been on maintenance antihistamine and steroid spray for my rhinitis for 5 years. And the common ones, because they say these diseases are familial, but I believe it's not just because of genetics, but it is familial because family eat together, like the same things, like the same food. So all of us like the same food. We like meat, pork, especially the fatty ones. We do not like vegetables. Fruits for us is negligible. We can eat, we cannot, we may not eat. It's okay. But we are fond of salty foods also, and we are not very fond of exercise, except for our other sister. And we thought we accepted the fact that we will die early because our father died only at the age of 55 because of chronic complications of diabetes as well. And we are so happy that upon discovering this, we actually don't need to change a lot of in our diet, in our lifestyle, because even exercise, although it's good, it's actually stress that makes our body more resilient to stress. That is the reason why our sister, who is very fond of exercise, can actually tolerate a lot of sugar. She has a has strong preference for sweet foods and cannot live without it. So she never grows fat, but she has lumps and aches and pains in her body. So none of us are excused actually. So we are so happy that of all the things that we've been used to, we only need to change one thing, and that is elimination of carbohydrates, sweets, refined sugars in our diet. And we can still enjoy the fatty pork, the steaks, the fish, the eggs as much as we want. We may or we may not exercise. Vegetables are optional. And if you eat those vegetables that are nutritionally dense, still low in carbohydrates and devoid of other phytochemicals or what we call as anti-nutrients, because there are certain vegetables still that can be that can work against our body. So I think you are more knowledgeable with nutrigenomics when it comes to food intake, so you will not tackle that more. So I guess that is the summary of the low carb nutrition and fasting as means for healing. And thank you very much for your time, and I hope to be working with you more in the near future. Thank you.
Wow, that was a lot of information, but great information. Can we ask like some questions? Do you still have time?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
what do you advise like for people that's not haven't started dieting or this or haven't tried this? What do you
Okay.
we have to start slow? What do you advise?
So it's actually all in the book. So they have the option. It actually will boil down to personality still. So there are those people who can jump start right then and there, but there are also those who would like to go slowly but surely. So it's actually a matter of mindset. But I advise for them to look into it, to look it up, for them to decide it themselves. So what I usually tell them is, you've been on what in your diet, on your current way of eating, your lifestyle for so long, and where did it get you? So even just for experiment sake, even just for the sake of knowledge, of science or experimentation, why not try this one, even just for a week, even just for 2 weeks? And most of them actually just feel a lot better after removing carbohydrates. Although it's under the disclaimer that the first 3 days actually will be quite hard because your body will still be on sugar withdrawal, which can really induce a lot of cravings, even manifestations like you feel like fainting, you will feel like even others like really going crazy. So what I tell them, it is because on an experiment, sugar is actually more addicting than heroin. So if you now know that sugar is damaging your health and then you still decide on still consuming sugar because simply you cannot live without it. So addiction is actually defined as knowing what is bad for you and still you continue to have it simply because you feel like you cannot live without it. So that is simply addiction. And if you recognize it, that is already the first step. And if you deny it, you are still long way on your recovery. So it's a matter of choice. We are, that's what I say, although we are pro health, but we are still pro choice. But we are advocating and informing as many people as we can so that they will have the option to choose. Because before, I believe that there are really a lot of people who are willing to do what it takes, who are willing to do the sacrifice, who are willing to do the extra mile, but it's just that they've been feeding the wrong information. Just like one of my patients, she was very frustrated because her husband was diagnosed with hypertension, I think, and diabetes at an early age, around 40 years old. And still, they were really good patients and complying with medications, complying with everything what the doctor says. And still, only at the age of 60, he already succumbed to death. And the medications just keep on adding up and adding up and adding up. Nothing. So we tell them that if your medications is controlling your blood pressure, but your medication is continue to increase, so actually you are not healing, but you are just covering up the symptoms. And the side effect of those medications are way, way worse. And it might heal your hypertension, but for all you know, it's damaging your kidneys, it's damaging your liver, it's damaging your heart even. So the best way to heal is actually the most natural. We just need to know what it is. And that's why we are advocating this education, this advocacy to as many people as possible, so that even if they choose to eat French fries, even if they choose to eat those junk, those treats, those chocolates and treats, they know that it is their choice. So I hate it when people say that I didn't know what happened. I just came in like this. So we are informing them so that if ever they still choose to do that, they cannot say that they didn't know what happened. They really know. It was a conscious decision. It was a conscious effort. So no more blaming. It's just taking responsibility, taking accountability of what we feed our body. And that will result to how our health will eventually come out after a year, 10 years, 20, 50 years from now.
Wow. Okay. Do you advise this? Can like diabetics do this one too? Like,
Actually, there is, if you search on Dr. Jason Fung, he is a nephrologist, Canadian nephrologist. So he's one of the father of fasting and low carb nutrition. And he is actually the founder of IDM, which is Intensive Dietary Management. So it is a center actually providing fasting as a form of healing for those with kidney disease and for those with diabetes. So it's just a tricky road. Once the patient is already having diabetes and with complications, fasting should be done under medical supervision and shouldn't be done alone because there might be a danger of diabetic ketoacidosis wherein there is elevated ketones and there would be elevated sugar, and that is a dangerous combination. So it's important to have a balance of that, lower the sugar first and then try to go into ketosis as a way to use up those energy, but eventually lowering down the intake of sugar. So it can be done, but it should be under supervision.
right. So, do you have some questions, guys? Ask there. You have some questions? You can type it if you're shy. I'll just
I
go.
agree with
Okay.
Dr. Fong. I do follow him,
Go ahead.
and I think one common misconception of everyone, especially those who are new in fasting, is that when they go into fasting mode, fasting time frame,
It's 8 o'clock.
they cannot eat anything. Doctora, would you be able to tell everyone like they could still drink water, they could still have broth, just no, nothing in it.
Yeah.
You want to
Yeah.
go for?
So there are a lot of fasting. So there's water fasting, and there's clean fasting, and there's dirty fasting. So water fasting is just your drinking water, but it's somewhat not that advisable anymore, because if you are only on water fasting, you're actually risking yourselves of electrolyte imbalance. So if you are fasting with and taking only water and still going on your day to day like normal, and you still drink 2 liters of water every day, so you will be peeing all those water, but you are not just peeing water. You will also be peeing, eliminating electrolytes, sodium, potassium, magnesium. So if you do fasting, it's actually more beneficial to do water plus electrolyte fasting, especially if it's more than 24 hours. If you are just doing it intermittently within 18 hours window, actually there's no need. But it is important that you do it with the right electrolytes if you decide to go into longer fast. So you can do electrolyte supplementation. There are a lot of available concoctions wherein you can incorporate your salt, your potassium, your magnesium into your 2 liter water for that day, so that you can consume it. And because our the signs of hypoglycemia, the irritability, even the weakness, are all just actually a product of electrolyte loss, and not actually because of sugar, because our body is actually capable of producing sugar through the process of gluconeogenesis in our liver. And for those who have signs of hypoglycemia, if you check their sugar, it's actually not hypoglycemia that's below 70. It's just that their body has been so used to very, very high sugar that even if it's still high normal sugar, they already have manifestations of hypoglycemia. But it has something to do with electrolytes as part of that. So as what I mentioned, and I know Dr. Jason Fung is a very it's the father of fasting when it comes to theories, because I don't know actually if he's doing it. So as my personal experience, because I'm actually a very, very skeptical person. I actually didn't believe it first until I tried it. So the moment I learned about it, me and my boyfriend and my mother actually started immediately with a 4 days and half of water and salt only fasting. So that was way back 2 years ago. And since we still continue our work, our daily jobs, and we just keep on texting each other, are you still okay, are you still okay, and comes 4.5 days, we actually feel good, we actually feel okay, and we can actually extend. But that was just the purpose of just proving it that it can be done. So we stopped already. And after that, I went a multiple of 4 days, 5 days. I moved into 7 days, and then 10 days. And the longest fasting I did was actually last year in August. It was a 12 days and half of water and electrolyte only fasting, because my earlier fasting, it's only salt. So I experienced like cramps on the late days. So on that longest fast that I did, which was 12 days and a half, I actually started taking in magnesium supplements and potassium. And good to know that I actually felt good. On that 12 and a half day, I wasn't even hungry, and I feel really good. But what pushed me to eat is because I miss food so much. So that is how our mental processes can really go against us, especially when it comes to fasting, because our body can actually tolerate more. It's just our brain cannot. And to name, I know it's not discussed by Dr. Jason Fong, and it's not even advised by them. But I actually recently discovered the benefit also of dry fasting. So for the sake of this discussion, I know you might feel like it's extreme, and I understand you so well that you might feel that, because I feel the same way. I actually did 2 cycles of 3 days fasting, because they say that 3 days of fasting, dry fasting, which is no food, no water, even no electrolytes, I mean completely dry fasting. So there's two kinds: soft dry fasting and hard dry fasting. Hard dry fasting is no contact with water, even washing your hands, toothbrushing, or taking a bath. But I just do soft dry fasting, which is I still take a bath, because it's routine for us Filipinos to take a bath routinely, and toothbrushing because I face patients every day. So I do soft dry fasting twice already, and I came across and actually read upon the benefits of a 7 day fasting, 7 day dry fasting. So I know it sounds extreme, and I know there's you cannot find in literature, scientific literature, that it can be done, but there are a lot of testimonials already, just like water fasting, that's not supported by many journals, simply because there's no profit from it. There's no there's no business from it, because when you are fasting, you're actually not consuming anything. So dry fasting, I usually just listen to my body. If I can take it, I don't force it. And today actually is my fifth day of dry fasting. My last food intake was still 102 hours ago. So that is already way back, almost 5 days ago. I am already about to finish my fifth day today for my dry fasting, and but I intend actually to extend up to 7 days, because by testimonies, by records, and all the other testimonials of people who are into dry fasting, there is a great and unexpected relief of dry fasting on 7 days, just like the miraculous healing that usually comes with 21-day fasting. So if you can see me now, so even if I still have extras to lose, but I'm actually on dry fasting already. So you will actually not be afraid to be skin and bones when you're dry fasting. Remember, if you have five kilos to lose, if you still can lose without going into malnourished side, you actually have fat stores that will enable you to fast for 22 and a half days without food sustenance. So that is how energy dense our fat is. It's just that I'm not saying that you will do it, but just know that skipping one meal will not kill you. Skipping 2 meals will not kill you. Skipping 3 meals even will not kill you. Or at the best part, it can even improve your health.
Wow. I know a lot of people here wants to ask a lot of questions, but we know we're running out of time. But
Yeah.
how can they do you do like one-on-one consultation? How can they reach out to you?
Okay. So yes, I do a one-on-one online consultation. So if it's just an initial consultation, so it can be done. And we also have what we call a jump start consultation. But it is actually what we discussed here. So since it will cost a little more, so they can just watch this and just do an initial consultation, especially for those with illnesses. So they can just follow my page and send a message there, because my clinic manager will assist you in your schedule. Because starting tomorrow, actually, I will be on a 9 day retreat, fasting retreat. So I will continue my dry fasting with water and electrolyte fasting for another week, so that I can complete the 2 weeks of fasting retreat that I scheduled for this year. So I aim to do that as my longest fast as compared to last year. And I do it for healing and hopefully having a brand new start, a clean slate. Because from time to time, there's Christmas, there's a lot of holidays, there's so many things that we eat a certain junks. I know I've accumulated another set of junks and toxins in my body that I want to eliminate, and I do fasting to have a brand new start, just like mimicking the fasting season of our ancestors, and then so that we can prepare for another set of normal at feasting harvest time season. So even if you're a Catholic, it's Lent season, and that's actually concept of fasting of Lent so that we can better prepare ourselves and enjoy ourselves for the coming feasting season. And if you're not, don't worry. If there's one thing that philosophers, atheists, and all other religions agreed upon, it's actually fasting. All of the great minds, most popular in our world history, are actually into fasting because it's simply not just physical cleansing, but also spiritual cleansing. So they can message my page. It's Dr. Josephine Grace C. Rojo. I think I'm the only one with that name. So you can easily search it in Facebook. And as per my email, so it's my complete name, Josephine Grace Chua Rojo at gmail.com.
Wow. Last question. Okay, in 3 words, can you summarize Dr. Grace here? What are you could just summarize what were your goals, were expectation, whatever your goal in life. Yeah, in 3 words. Or
So my goal in life actually is to spread this advocacy to as many people as possible, to understand that low carb nutrition is not just low carb diet, but it's actually the natural human nutrition. But we just need to label it low carb because it is comparison with what we brought up as compared to what we brought up in, which is the balanced diet, which is actually a very high carbohydrate diet, and fasting as something not limited to priests, to nuns, to monks, but something that can be applied to normal people like you and me. So low carb nutrition and fasting as a lifestyle, as a part of our life, can be things that we naturally for our health. Any other supplements are welcome as long as they disagree with the natural process of our body. So it's all welcome and all okay. And it's important to understand that so that we can better our health. Because the moment we better our health, it's the first priority. It is the most important factor. It is the most important care about will only be very limited up to a certain amount of time because it will be limited until what year, what is your lifespan is. And if we prolong our life, not just our life, but longevity, that is active life, a healthy, long life, and that's the only way that we can actually show our appreciation, our love to our own self, our loved ones, and the cause that we believe in. You're on mute.
you mentioned about your book. How can we avail your book? Is it available on Amazon?
Yes, it's actually available in Amazon. So since there's a lot of books in Amazon, so you can just type in my name, so Josephine Grace Rojo, and then Perfect at Last Health or Perfect Last Weight or Perfect at Last Wellness, and it will just pop up.
All right. Thank you so much. Good evening, mabuhay, and God bless you and
God bless.
all of us here.
A group photo?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well,
I'm taking one too.
okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you.